We're talking about the Jazz and the Nuggets. Now, Jamal Murray, with a baller-like performance, 36 points. Nikola Jokic, 29, 10 rebounds, 29 points, 10 rebounds. And the Nuggets rallied back to beat the Jazz in overtime. Game 1 that kicked off the playoffs in the bubble. It was the matinee in Orlando. This game had the least juice. Now, why do I say this game had the least juice? Because in the eyes of television, they buried this game to the afternoon start, assuming that it just wasn't good TV. It's not good TV nationally for the Jazz and the Nuggets, but it certainly turned out to be an interesting game and a competitive game that went to overtime. And the better story coming out of the losing locker room, which is generally true unless it involves the Clippers, the Dodgers, or the Rams, the better story is in the losing locker room. So Donovan Mitchell, right, losing locker room, had a jaw-dropping 57 points. 57 points, and Utah lost the game. Now, you wouldn't know that the Jazz actually were in the loser's side of the ledger based on surfing the internet. No, there were glowing testimonials on Spider. It's his nickname, right? Donovan Mitchell. Otherworldly performance, out-of-body experience for Donovan Mitchell. So let us discuss the question. We believe in truth and honesty in these parts. So what grade, you are the professor, what grade do you give Donovan Mitchell for a 57-point performance? A 57-point performance. Now, I give him a C-. Now, we lead off with the fact that Donovan Mitchell is an offensive dynamo. This is not a newsflash. We have known this for some time, that Mitchell is one of the up-and-comers in the NBA, and he has the skill set to devour opponents on the offensive side of the court. No one's ever said the opposite of that. It's always been the case. So that exactly does not rise to the big news. Now, Donovan Mitchell, who in this sterile, joyless arena put up a monster offensive game, congratulations. But unfortunately, and I think we'll agree on this is not some kind of one-on-one contest. It's not fantasy basketball. If this was just on DraftKings, then Donovan Mitchell would get an A+++. Unfortunately, that's not the criteria that you have to grade on. It's not a pick-up one-on-one game. It's none of that. When you are grading a performance, the outcome of the game absolutely matters. And as Herm Edwards preached years ago with the Jets, you play to win the game. Right? You don't play to put 57 points up and walk off with your tail between your legs because you've lost the game in shame. No, you play to win the game. And the performance here, Jamal Murray gets an A+++, but he only had 36 points. That's not as sexy as 57 points. But who is the better player? Jamal Murray was the better player, especially in key moments of this game. It's not even close. It's not even close at all. Now, to continue this train of thought, you have to factor in the outcome of the game when you're filling out the report card. And this was a winnable game. It's a winnable game. With better execution, the Utah Jazz would have stolen game one. They're the underdog, remember. They're the underdog. The Nuggets perceived to be the better team. And Denver, they were right there primed for the taking. Right? They were right there, fresh meat. You could have taken right there. And these fall into the empty stat category. I put the 57 points in an empty stat category. Now, I realize I'm in the minority and that many people are gaga for the stat line. And again, if I was playing fantasy sports on DraftKings, I would be right there, but I'm not. Now, furthermore, there's a lot of people who didn't watch the game that are blaming Donovan Mitchell's teammates, and that is how you know. That's a tell. You can tell you didn't watch the game. If you're one of these people in the media or a fanboy that is saying, oh, Donovan Mitchell, it's not his fault, it's his teammates' fault. No, it's not. You are exposing yourself as a fraud and a low-information fan. You are a box score reader. You don't want to be a box score reader. Now, since we have no life, and we also have a lot of free time during the day, I was able to watch the second half and the overtime of this performance. And when you do a frame-by-frame, Zapruder film style, frame by frame by frame, you go through the whole thing, right? The whole rigmarole, from soup to nuts, and you look at the game. And you see that Donovan Mitchell's performance unraveled. It was great. He was at an A+++. Utah had a 5-point lead going to the fourth quarter. This has 12 minutes. There's a lot of time. That's true. Donovan Mitchell had 29 points, and while he was on the court, the Utah Jazz had outscored the Nuggets by 4 points. So they were ahead of the game with him on the court. The Jazz were better with Mitchell out there. Now, then, in the fourth quarter, now Mitchell had 22 points in about 9 minutes. But in that time frame, Denver was able to come all the way rollicking back like a stampede, and they tied and then forced overtime. But this is the key part, and I am being generous giving Donovan Mitchell a C- because the reason the Nuggets were able to come back in this game, and even the most diehard Rocky Mountain sports fan would agree, is because Donovan Mitchell had the fart, the brain fart, at a time you cannot have a brain fart at this point in the game. All right, let's flash back in the Wayback Machine. The Jazz had possession of the ball. Possession of the ball is 9/10 of victory. So the Jazz have the ball, 4-point lead. That is more than one possession. So 4-point lead with 1:54 remaining. And Donovan Mitchell decides to drive in the slow lane at a time you needed to drive in the fast lane. He's walking the ball up, la, 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 dribbling, walking the ball up the court. You know what happened next? Do you know? Donovan Mitchell was called for an 8-second violation. He could not get the ball across half court in 8 seconds. So with 1:46 remaining, right, got possession at 1:54, 1:46 remaining in the game, Jazz up by 4. He screwed over Utah. Donovan Mitchell puked. He puked all over the court. And the Nuggets came back down, and Jamal Murray, who gets an A+++, Jamal Murray hits a money ball, 3-pointer, makes it a 1-point game. All right, so instead of the Jazz conceivably getting a 2-point basket being up by 6 or a 3-point basket being up by 7 with 1:35-ish, give or take, in the game. So you could conceivably have been up by as many as 7, and instead it's a 1-point game. It's a 1-point game. All right, we have audio. Let's go to the audio tape, as Warner Wolf would say. Here we go.
I kind of put a little bit on myself for the 8-second violation, and then they come down and hit a 3, and that really changed the entire game, that sequence right there. So it's little things that we can control and fix, but at the end of the day, we're not overreacting. It's one game. We got to go back out there and get ready for game 2.
All right. Now, I loved Spider-Man when I was a kid, but let me talk to Spider here for a second. No, that's not a little thing. That's a big thing. If it's playoff basketball, you're exposed. You got exposed. That's not a small thing. And, you only get so many shots at this. Now, all the Nuggets have to do is win 3 out of the next 6. You've got to win 4 out of the next 6 to advance. And that dagger by Jamal Murray, man, that was the turning point in the game, and that gave Denver a path to tie the game. They eventually did, and then they win it in overtime. All right, last thing here. So while Donovan Mitchell scoring the third most, let me get 3 fingers up, third most points in NBA playoff history, it is absolutely nothing to sneeze at, but I, again, put it in the category of empty stats. You also have to focus on the attention to detail, and that's what's going to separate these teams. The margins are so thin with most of these teams, especially in the West, that attention to detail is going to be the thing that tips the scales in your favor. Now, I would like to think that Donovan Mitchell would have been satisfied, and maybe he would have been, to score, 18 or 20 points, and the shorthanded Jazz team without Mike Conley and others would have picked up the victory. His miscue directly led to the Nuggets getting off the schneid on this particular day, and it's a bad job by him. An 8-second violation is something you would expect to see. They don't even have the rule, I believe, at the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club. I don't think they do, but that's that level. You expect like a 9-year-old to make that kind of decision, or J.R. Smith for that matter. The whole game fell apart like wet bread in Mitchell's hands. That's not a little thing. That's a big thing, right? That's a big thing. Now, people aren't going to remember this. Michael Jordan had a monster game for the Chicago Bulls and the most points ever scored in a loss against the Celtics at the Boston Garden, the old Boston Garden. And I don't remember moments in that game. I just remember the final score. I would imagine that Jordan screwed up somewhere along the way, but we don't remember that because over the course of time, we forget about that. And over the course of time, people will forget about the fact that Mitchell had an 8-second violation with just less than 2 minutes to go in the game and the Jazz nursing a lead. And Mitchell, he was too laid back in this game. At the end of the game, he panicked. And I know he knows what to do, but it certainly looked like he didn't know what to do. Like I believe the theory here is that he fell into the trap of the bubble. Like, it doesn't feel like a real game in the bubble. It feels like a fake summer league type game. And in the summer league without officials there, you can take 25 seconds to bring the ball in the front court. Bad job by him. And by the way, here's a wild concept, not just for Donovan Mitchell, but for everyone in the NBA. That's going to be wild. Could you at least occasionally try to play some defense? At least occasionally, right? And you don't have to come down. And I love three-point shots, but you're ruining it for me with all these three-point shots. It's very annoying.